fact-checking Hillary Clinton's book What Happened. Hillary Clinton might have become America's first woman president, but she didn't, and her book What Happened is her explanation of why. Clinton writes about details as minor as eating pork chop on a stick at the Iowa State Fair, and liking it, and as damaging as her statement during a CNN town hall that we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business, which she called garbled and the exact opposite of her plan to foster jobs in coal country. The book is part personal memoir, part political science treatise, part self-defense of a failed campaign and part strategy session for Democratic politicians to come. We'll leave it to the pundits to assess whether she lived up to the promise in her introduction that she is letting down my guard. For us at PolitiFact, Clinton's book is a trove of checkable claims. She is a self-confessed wonk, and her references to research and statistics range from the mundane to the deepest undercurrents that shape our politics. Our fact-checker's guide to her book follows that eclectic mix. The fact-checking organization PolitiFact, which found I told the truth more than any other presidential candidate in 2016. Okay, first we did what anyone did and searched for our name. We found it. The mention of PolitiFact comes in reference to a March 2016 column by former New York Times editor Jill Abramson, who said Clinton was fundamentally honest. The truth is Clinton is right depending on how you calculate truth. We fact-checked Clinton 196 times from the moment she announced her candidacy in the spring of 2015 through Election Day 2016. Of those 196 fact-checks, 100 rated true or mostly true. That means 51% of Clinton claims we fact-checked were basically accurate. Of candidates we fact-checked at least 50 times, only one did better, Senator Bernie Sanders. Nearly 52% of the claims we checked from Sanders rated true or mostly true. Clinton, however, does better if you only count true statements that we rated. There, it's Clinton 19%, Sanders 11%, Senator Marco Rubio 10%, and Senator Ted Cruz 9%. Last point, and it's a big one. We don't check every statement a politician makes. So any comparison is problematic. I failed to win a majority of white women, although I did better with them than Obama did in 2012. Clinton is correct, but her comparison to Barack Obama's numbers in 2012 obscures a more sobering comparison. Yes, exit polls show that 42% of white women picked Obama in 2012. But Clinton's 43% is less than other Democrats in recent memory. Here's the list for past Democrats. Obama 2008 to 46%, Kerry 2004 to 45%, Clinton 1996 to 48%. While Clinton's statement is technically accurate, there's a bit of cherry-picking going on. Fewer Americans are moving than ever before. Clinton struggled to connect with working-class voters and she opened a chapter on the subject with her quote about coal mining jobs. She said the fallout from that remark buried her broader message of what needed to be done, and this chapter became her chance to have the last word. But as she laid out how and where she would have targeted investment, she cautioned that people need to keep their expectations in check. In some places, the old jobs aren't coming back, and the infrastructure and workforce needed to support big new industries aren't there, she wrote. As hard as it is, people may have to leave their hometowns and look for work elsewhere in America. As a sign of how tough the challenge is, she noted, fewer Americans are moving than ever before. That's accurate. The U.S. Census Bureau said in November, the percentage of Americans moving over a one-year period fell to an all-time low in the United States to 11.2% in 2016. A further study by the Pew Research Center found that millennials, people between the ages of 25 and 35, play a large role in that trend. In 1963 and 2000, 26% of people that age had moved in the past year. In 2016, just 20% said they had. In 2008, Trump raised eyebrows by selling a mansion in Palm Beach to a Russian oligarch at an inflated price $54 million more than he paid for it just 4 years earlier. Clinton's got the markup right. Donald Trump bought the Maison de l'Amity in Palm Beach, Florida, at a bankruptcy auction in 2004 for $41.3 million. He sold it just before the market crash in 2008 for $95 million to Dmitry Rybolovlev, a Russian billionaire who made his money in the fertilizer business. At the time Trump said, This is the highest price ever paid for a house. Clinton presented this nugget as an indication of Trump's cozy ties with Russia. The New York Times offered the theory that Rybolovlev was aiming to tie up money as he went through a contentious divorce. The Women's March was the biggest single protest in American history. Two researchers reached this conclusion by compiling publicly reported estimates and crowdsourced information submitted from around the country. They said the many marches around the country on January 21, 2017, brought about 4.1 million people to the streets in the United States. That appears to be a record, but we're dealing with imprecise estimates. The closest competitors were the Vietnam War moratorium marches in 1969 and 1970, which involved about 1 million people in the United States. A similar number came out to protest the Iraq War in 2003. Earth Day in 1970 posted large numbers, but most of that, the researchers said, included workshops and science fairs. Another review of large American protests included the 1997 Million Woman March, the 1982 Anti-Nuclear Weapons March in New York City, and the 1993 March on Washington for lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights and liberation. While some estimated the numbers at or above 1 million people, they all would be less than the American turnout for the Women's March. Research now shows that hot sauce boosts the immune system. This tracks back to someone who wrote a book called Hot Sauce Nation, so, dare we say, take it with a grain of salt. But in any case, chilies contain folic acid, and vitamins A, E and C, all of which have been associated with a stronger immune system. We don't think the link to hot sauce per se has been peer-reviewed. No non-incumbent Democrat had run successfully to succeed another two-termer since Vice President Martin Van Buren won in 1836. Call it the Democratic curse. Martin Van Buren, a founder of the Democratic Party, became the 8th president, succeeding Andrew Jackson. Some might quibble that at the time, party names were somewhat in flux and the term Democratic Republicans could still be heard, but Van Buren was a Democrat. The challenge of succession isn't just a Democratic one. It took more than 150 years before a two-term Republican president led to the election of another Republican. That happened in 1988 when George H.W. Bush followed Ronald Reagan into the White House. Today, when you type Pat Schroeder into Google, the very first suggestion is Pat Schroeder crying. Clinton's point here was that women politicians are covered differently than men, and crying is one of the markers. When politicians such as Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama welled up, Clinton said they were treated with compassion. But when a woman cries, it can be viewed far less charitably, she wrote. We tried the Schroeder test. Clinton's right. There had been 75 straight months of job growth under President Obama, and incomes for the bottom 80% were finally starting to go up. Looking back over the years, Clinton said the American middle class really had gotten screwed, but she lashed Trump for rubbing salt in their wounds. He was wrong about so much, she wrote. There had been 75 straight months of job growth under President Obama, and incomes for the bottom 80% were finally starting to go up. Government numbers back her up. As we've reported before, the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows 75 consecutive months of job growth under Obama. The U.S. Census Bureau said that in 2015, real median household income rose 5.2%. Looking at quintiles, the income groups broken down into 5 equal number of households, all except the top quintile rose, if only modestly, between 2014 and 2015. The only catch is that when the Bureau factored in household size, there was a 0.1% drop for the fourth quintile. That dilutes Clinton's claim by a hair, but strictly in terms of incomes, she was correct. Hillary Clinton opens up on why she lost in first live interview since election. Hillary Clinton said she lost last year's presidential election because of unprecedented actions of former FBI Director James Comey, who told lawmakers just 11 days before Election Day that he was reopening an investigation into her private email server. I was just dumbfounded, Clinton said on Today Wednesday in her first live interview since her November loss. I thought, what is he doing? The investigation is closed. I knew there was no new information. And then it became clear this was not necessary. Clinton called Comey's October 28 letter to Congress a determining factor in her loss to President Donald Trump and said she felt strongly the former FBI head went way beyond his role when he decided to reintroduce the probe. Absent that, I believe and I think the evidence shows, I would have won, she said. Clinton's appearance in Studio 1A came on the occasion of her newly released book, What Happened? A frank and candid assessment of last year's presidential campaign and, in her own words, the mistakes we made that cost her the White House. In the book, Clinton addresses Russia's interference in the election, but stops short of accusing the Trump campaign of colluding with the Kremlin. But part of the book's aim, she told Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie, was to lay out all the information that I think should trouble Americans about the meddling of Russian President Vladimir Putin, a longtime Clinton foe, and his aides. We know there was a lot of interesting coincidences, if you will, between what people associated with Trump were saying at the time, and what later came to pass, she said, pointing to emails from Clinton campaign manager John Podesta that were leaked to the public. The Russians hacked those emails. They stole them, Clinton said. She also pointed out that a number of developments about Russia's role in the election have surfaced since she finished the book. Among them were revelations that during the campaign Trump's oldest son met with a Russian lawyer who claimed to have damaging information on Clinton. That meeting gained renewed interest last week when Trump Jr. told Senate investigators he attended the June 2016 meeting at Trump Tower in New York to learn about Clinton's fitness to be president. Clinton called the explanation ridiculous. It's another absurd lie to cover up what really was going on, which I hope we finally uncover and understand, she said. While in her book, Clinton takes plenty of shots at Trump's actions on the campaign, she was slightly more restrained in her interview. I respect the fact that he is the president. I just wish he were the president for all Americans, she said. I wish he was not engaging in a lot of the scapegoating and behavior in office that I think is bad for this county. Failed Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton demonstrated on Wednesday one of the ways she dealt with her shocking loss to President Trump in the aftermath of the 2016 election while promoting her new campaign memoir. Seems like you've been doing a lot of yoga, CNN's Anderson Cooper asked during an interview organized as part of Clinton's What Happened book tour. Yes, I have, Clinton responded. And alternate nostril breathing. Cooper then asked Clinton to show him what the coping mechanism entailed. I would highly recommend it, Clinton started. You are supposed to shut your eyes. I don't want to shut my eyes on national television, but you do hold your nostril and breathe through one. And you hold it and then you exhale to the other and you keep going. Clinton continued, saying that the technique is very relaxing if you try it while sitting cross-legged on the yoga mat and you're really trying to inhale, and hold it and then have a long exhale. I found it quite helpful, she said of her personal experience.